Welcome back, everybody. My name is Elijah Desmond, your host and co-CEO and co-founder of Dental Pitch Brokerage. And we have with us today the man of the hour, co-CEO and co-founder, Matt Ornstein. How you doing, Matt?
Doing great, Elijah. Happy to be here.
Awesome. For those of you who missed the first episode, we got a chance to dig into Matt's and my background, and talk a little bit about what the entire season was going to be about. And also, this episode is the EBITDA Masterclass. And we're super excited to ask Matt these questions. He is the expert. He is the published author. And by the way, you can get the book that he is going to be talking about today absolutely free. Download it on the website at no cost. So super excited to give everyone that. And Matt, I would love to hear what was the inspiration behind the book on EBITDA, and what message were you hoping to share with the audience?
Yeah, great question. So I'll put this here against my chest. That's what the book looks like, the Dental EBITDA Handbook. A clear explanation of what EBITDA is and how EBITDA affects the market value of your dental practice. The inspiration for it was that after being in the dental industry for a period of time, I realized that a huge percentage of dentists had never heard of EBITDA, and a huge percentage of dentists had heard the term EBITDA, but did not know what it really was, and why EBITDA is so very, very important. It's the most important thing to know and understand when you're getting ready to sell your dental practice. So I had read books on it, earlier in my career. I'm 55, and, pretty much any book you can find on EBITDA is like 200 to 300 pages long. It is so boring. And, if they wanted to, the authors could have distilled it down to about 10 or 12 pages, which is what I did, and just gotten right to it. So I wanted to write a book that someone could read in about 15 minutes and have a really clear understanding of exactly what EBITDA is, what it means, and how it affects the value of their dental practice when they're ready to sell.
Awesome. So breaking down EBITDA, can you briefly explain what EBITDA stands for and why it's such an important concept for business owners to understand?
Yes, absolutely. So EBITDA is an acronym, EBITDA. It stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Again, please read my book. It's free on the website. But in a nutshell, EBITDA is a very fancy term to describe the net profit that a dental practice makes before paying interest to a bank on any loans that the dental practice has. And the reason EBITDA is such an important concept for a dentist to understand is because when a dentist goes to sell the dental practice, the buyer's going to ask the dentist, what were your collections the last, 2 or 3 years? What was your net income? But at the end of the day, all buyers are going to value a dental practice based off of EBITDA, and they will put a multiplier on the EBITDA to value a practice. Some buyers will pay 5 times your EBITDA. Some will pay 7 times your EBITDA. Some buyers might pay 10 times your EBITDA. But if you don't know what your EBITDA is, you will have no idea whether you're getting a fair price for your practice when you go to sell. So you got to understand what EBITDA is and what it means.
Awesome, Matt. And just to kind of go a little bit further on the multiples, I talk to sellers all the time, and they call me, and they have a group that, let's just say, is 500,000 in EBITDA, and they said they've read in magazines and books and heard on podcasts that they're going to get a 10 times multiple, and I have to let them know that that is not for an office that's a $500,000 EBITDA. It is for a much larger group than that, and that is absolutely not happening in this day and age. Do you want to talk a little bit about that so people understand the multiples a little bit more?
Yeah, and I'll just be real brief because the multiples change depending on the overall economy and what interest rates are, because most of the buyers of dental practices borrow a substantial amount of the purchase price from a bank. So the buyers are going to have to pay interest to the bank, and the higher the interest rate, the less a buyer can pay for a dental practice. But the multiples of EBITDA increase as EBITDA increases. So I'm just using some examples. Please don't hold me to these. But if a practice has, let's say, $300,000 to $500,000 of EBITDA, that practice might get 5 times their EBITDA. If a practice gets up to $1 million to 2 million or 3 million of EBITDA, the multiple might go up to 6 times. When you get to 5 million of EBITDA, the multiple might be 7 to 8 times EBITDA. And then when you get to about 10 million of EBITDA, the multiple is 10 to 12 times EBITDA. So the higher the EBITDA, the higher the multiple that you get. But it's important to understand that, and we keep close tabs on what the market's paying. So we're tracking it monthly. So someone tells us, hey, our EBITDA is this amount. What kind of multiple is the market paying? We can give a pretty great idea of what that practice would be worth in the next couple months.
Yes. Now, can we talk just a little bit about adjusted EBITDA? What is adjusted EBITDA, and how does it differ from standard EBITDA? Why is it crucial in a business valuation?
That's a great question. So, and it's important to understand the term adjusted EBITDA versus EBITDA. Buyers will pay a multiple of your EBITDA. So here's an easy example. If your EBITDA is $1 million and the buyers are paying 6 times EBITDA, your practice would sell for 6 times $1 million, which is $6 million. But the buyers are really going to pay you a multiple based off of your adjusted EBITDA. Adjusted means taking out any expenses and costs that lowered your EBITDA, where those expenses and costs will not be incurred going forward by the buyer. So I'll give you a really easy example. Let's say that your CPA tells you your EBITDA was $800,000 last year. But then we look through your books and see that you spent $200,000 on renovating your office, which is a cost. Well, whoever buys your office is not going to have that $200,000 renovation expense when they buy your office, because the money's already been spent. So you get to add back that non-recurring expense of maybe equipment you bought or renovating your office. So even though your CPA is correct and says your EBITDA last year was $800,000, you can add back the $200,000 you spent on equipment or renovations and adjust your EBITDA upwards to $1 million, because next year, if nothing else changes, you're not doing those renovations and you're not buying that same equipment again, your adjusted EBITDA is really $1 million. And that's the value you should be paid on when you go to sell your practice. So adjusted EBITDA just means, what is your real EBITDA going forward if you remove any expenses from the last 12 months, where those expenses will not be incurred the following year because they were one-time expenses.
Awesome. I love the car wash analogy that you often have. Can you share the example of how it highlights the importance of understanding EBITDA?
Yeah, absolutely. We own 9 car washes and we wash 1 million cars a year. We bought the car washes to build the EBITDA up much higher than where it was when we bought it, and then be selling those car washes in 2025. Currently, for the amount of EBITDA we have in the industry, the car washes should sell at 12 times EBITDA. So this is a fun example, and it's a true example. We found a different supplier for the chemicals that we use to wash the cars. And our team came back and said, we can just change suppliers, have the same exact chemicals, and we're going to save 15 cents per car in cost. Well, that doesn't sound like much. Big deal. We're saving 15 cents per car. But when you start doing the math, it gets really interesting, because if we wash 1 million cars a year and we save 15 cents per car on our chemical cost, it means we're saving $150,000 a year in chemical costs. which means our EBITDA increased by $150,000. And when we sell the company, we'll sell at 12 times EBITDA. So 12 times 150,000 is $1,800,000 of extra profit that the car wash company will get upon sale from making that small change and saving 15 cents of cost per car. So the implications are dramatic when you understand EBITDA and EBITDA multiples.
Wow. Well, when you're boosting EBITDA specifically now in a dental practice, what are a couple of specific actionable strategies that a dental practice can use to increase their EBITDA?
That, in my opinion, is the most important question of the podcast. So there are only two ways to increase EBITDA. You can decrease your costs, or you can increase your profits. So it's one or the other. Reduce costs or increase your profits through increasing your collections. Let's talk about cost first. You can go through and take a look at what you're paying for supplies, paying for advertising and marketing. Maybe you could, renegotiate your lease and get a better, lower price on your lease cost. You may find that if you do a proper analysis that, and while I'm not a fan of laying people off, but you may find that, you have one too many people in your dental practice, and you can operate just fine with one less employee. So you can reduce costs. That's one way to do it. And then you can increase your profitability by increasing your collections and doing more for patient care. So you might, if you're not doing implants, if you're a dentist, you could go take a course and learn how to do implants, which is very, very, very high profit margin. You could learn how to do veneers and provide that to your patients. If you're not doing orthodontics, you could bring orthodontics into your practice instead of referring it out. You could learn some endodontic services. You could do extractions. You could do sedation dentistry. But you've either got to increase your collections through additional services or reduce your costs. But if you do both, the effect is dramatic. So let's say an average practice is going to sell for 7 times EBITDA, and you're able to, between reducing costs and increasing some of the services you offer, increase the profits of your practice by $100,000. When you go to sell your practice, that additional $100,000 at a 7 times multiple is going to put an additional $700,000 of profit in your pocket when you sell your practice. So every dollar counts, and it doesn't count one for one, right? Every extra dollar of EBITDA you get is going to be worth typically somewhere between $5 and $10 of extra profit when you sell.
Wow. That's awesome. And you break it down in a way that everybody can understand. Just to go a little bit further on that, talk about some stories that are important to know, or not red flags, but things just to know. Everybody should know their EBITDA, and they should all get a quality of earnings light prior to going to sell your practice. And now, let me just give an example. If I am a large dental group, we won't name names, we're friends with all of them. We have over 55 buyers, by the way, that we shop our sellers to. But I won't name the name of the large group, but a large group comes along and they see your beautiful practice, your whole life's work, okay? And they come and they basically do a quality of earnings. And they tell you your EBITDA, okay? You have no clue what your EBITDA is. And then you sell your practice. You could have got a lot more if you went and got your own quality of earnings. So that's why we have all of the people that we work with, as far as the sellers, we're a sell-side brokerage firm. We have them go and get a quality of earnings light done so we can confidently defend their EBITDA, instead of them just selling to somebody and having no idea how much their practice is even really worth. That's like having somebody come and purchase your house and you didn't even have estimate, or you didn't find out how much your house was even worth.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to relate it to real estate, before you sell your house, you want to have an independent appraisal done of your house to find out what your house is really worth, instead of just having a buyer come along and saying, I mean, a great example might be, if you had an appraisal done you find out your house is worth $1 million based on comparable sales and actual data. If you don't have an appraisal done and you don't know what your house is worth, a buyer might come along and say, hey, I'll give you $700,000 for your house, which is a ton of money. And that's a large number. You say, oh, okay, great. And you left $300,000 on the table when that same buyer, looking for a fair deal, would have paid you $1 million for your house. So you have to know what your practice is worth. The only way to really know what your practice is truly worth is to get a quality of earnings done, which is just a fancy way of saying a CPA firm will come in, look at your books, and tell you what your adjusted sellable EBITDA really is.
Yep. And also, I want to make sure that I want to echo those words and agree with you, but this say not every CPA. So your CPA that you are with currently right now, more than likely, you should be going to a separate expert on getting a quality of earnings light. There's been many practices that we work with. The CPA turns in all the numbers, et cetera, and said this is their EBITDA, and it's far off. Could be for the better or the worse. So that's why it's important to have the expert. It's like forensic accounting, right? That the expert go and get your exact EBITDA. And another thing is that, we are a company of integrity and we want to represent you properly. So we can't go from another CPA that has your EBITDA, say, way higher and try to get a multiple on that. And we don't want you to get one that's way lower. We want to get the real and accurate EBITDA. And that's what what we believe in. One last thing, Matt, you had mentioned on one of the big stages, I think it was the Dykema conference, which, by the way, everybody needs to make sure that they show up to the Dykema conference. I believe it's in August, and the Women in DSO conference in Vegas. We'll be there. But you said something bright from the stage, like you always do, but it had something to do with the advice that you would give. If you had two pieces of advice that you would give to a seller, even if they didn't work with a brokerage firm, what would they be? Two strong pieces of advice.
Well, the first, most important, you already touched on. You've got to find out what your real EBITDA is. And Elijah touched on this. There are accounting firms that specialize in dentistry and dental EBITDA. You want to use one of those. And I'll give you an example. If you're going to go sell your house, you're not going to have someone that values, antique cars, who's an expert in value in antique cars. You're not going to hire that person to come tell you what your house is worth. And you're not going to hire an appraiser who only does real estate to come tell you what your car collection is worth. You need to have someone who's an expert in your field tell you what the value of your assets are. So you want to have a quality of earnings that's not expensive. It's usually around $2,500. You want to get a quality of earnings done from a firm that specializes in dentistry, so you know what your EBITDA is. Critically important. The second bit of advice, if you're a dentist and you're considering selling and you get some offers in for your practice, before you decide to go with a particular buyer, you really need to call 2 or 3 doctors that have sold their practice to that buyer and speak to the doctors and find out truthfully, what is the experience been like after the sale and purchase of that dentist's dental practice? Because some buyers treat the dentist great after the sale and purchase, and some buyers make the dentist's life miserable after the purchase and sale. So you want to know who you're selling to and what it's truly like having that buyer as the new owner of your dental practice. Because if you're not happy at work, you're not happy in life.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Well, listen, for anybody who wants to pick up that book, as we said before, it is on the Dental Pitch Brokerage website. You can get a free download and read it in as little as 15 minutes. So any last words, Matt?
Thanks for having me on here. You're always a great host, and I just look forward to helping as many dentists sell their practices to great buyers at the best possible price and terms that the market's willing to pay, and help people achieve their financial dreams.
Awesome. And just so you all know what you have to look forward to next, we have Brian Kaleo, the director over at Dykema, who created the Dykema Dental Conference as well. And his topic is going to be understanding the DSO landscape. Which one is right for you? We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.